Hey guys, JKMan99 here, and welcome to my Lost videos. Alright, so we are now on Season 3 of my version of Lost. And we're just going to quickly recap some of the major differences before we go into this season. So, the others have captured some of the survivors, but instead of just being Jack, Kate, and Sawyer, we now have Jack, Kate, Sawyer, and Charlie as the ones that are captured by the others. Another thing to point out is that the hatch is not blown up. The hatch is completely there, so we'll see how the hatch comes into play in Season 3. There are a few deaths that have occurred already that did not occur going into Season 3. Echo died in Season 2. Paulo died in Season 2. And so did Mars, but I realized he was dead already in the original version, so I realized these last couple videos we've gone through a lot of scenarios with Edward Mars, but now since he's dead, basically all that stuff from the last two seasons has kind of died out. So in other words, we're no longer going to see the survivors have any issue with Kate holding a weapon or anything like that, or any trust of Kate at that. At this point, she's been in the army, like, she's earned her keep. So those are the primary differences. But the main difference going into this season is, what if Charlie was the one to get the flashes and not Desmond? That's going to be the primary what if of Season 3. Alright, so without any further ado, here we go. Alright, so let's start off by reviewing the Lost 48 survivors and who is still there. For main characters, we have Kate, Sawyer, Claire, Hurley, Ben, Juliet, Charlie, Locke, Saeed, Jin, Sun, Jack, and Desmond. Now clearly I'm adding Ben, Juliet, and Desmond here to the main characters at this point. So main characters are going to be main characters regardless if they're part of the 48 survivors or not. So gone are the days where that is an exclusive list. The recurring characters and extras will only be the 48 survivors, or the 48 survivors perceived at the time. So for recurring characters, we have Rose, Vincent, Steve, Tracy, Nikki, Frogert, Jeff, Doug, Sullivan, Dale, Bernard, Ivana, and Ethan. Now, again, Ethan is deceased, so we're still including him here because he was one of the original, but Ethan's only here because he's going to be seen in flashbacks. For extras, we have Pamela, Jerome, Kiana, Beth, Orlando, Floyd, Adelina, Marcia, Amato, Faith, Becky, Ava, Dane, Jesse, Natalie, Chloe, and Brian. So just to reiterate, Jason is no longer here because he was killed in Season 2. And same thing with the recurring characters. Both Mars and Paulo were killed, so they are also no longer there. So the one thing to keep in mind with all these episodes is that if I don't say something about what happens in the episode, assume that whatever I don't say is exactly how it goes in the episode. Okay, so we will now start with episode 1 from Season 3, which is A Tale of Two Cities, which of course is a Jack-centric episode. And we're going to start off the same way the episode starts off, with Juliet listening to her CD. And I want you to note how happy she gets once she listens to the song Downtown. Because that'll play into a conversation that happens between characters later on in this episode. Now, unlike the actual episode, in my version, we're going to include the lost missing pieces scene between Amelia and Juliet when they look at the envelope. Now, in this episode, the island doesn't shake due to anything going on in the hatch, because remember, that button is fake. So what happens is, during the book club, they hear a plane, a very low-flying plane instead, and that's what gets their attention. Now, I don't think that the entire audience is going to believe that they're on the island when they hear the plane. They're probably just like, hearing a loud noise. You're mostly going to hear a loud noise, and it might not be apparent that it's a plane until you actually see it. So there won't be any earthquake or anything like that. The Jack scenes are exactly the same. The flashbacks exactly the same. The only difference is going to be what's really happening at the beach with Hurley, Locke, and Desmond. So remember, Echo dies in blowing himself up with dynamite in the hatch in season 2. So we are left with the aftermath of that in this episode. So what we basically have is Hurley, Locke, and Desmond bury Echo, but before that happens, we're going to have Locke and Desmond in the hatch, and Hurley's still outside because that's where he was at the beginning of season 2. So that's going to lead to some conversations. So while they're digging the hole to bury Mr. Echo, Locke and Desmond are going to discuss what's going on in the hatch. And Locke wonders why he didn't hear the audio of system failure when Henry, aka Ben, didn't enter the numbers. And Desmond says that he must have entered the numbers, or maybe he didn't, but they never tried to turn the failsafe key, and maybe that was the purpose of the experiment. Locke believes that Henry entered the numbers to continue to torment him because the system failure audio would have told him that the button wasn't real. So basically he believes that Henry/Ben didn't want to let him know what was really going on yet. And that leads to an overall discussion about Rosinski, because Desmond starts to think, well, wait a minute, if the button was fake the whole time, why did Rosinski, kill himself? Why didn't he just, not participate in the experiment after a while? And that's when Locke says, oh, well, maybe he thought it was real the whole time after so many years. And, it kind of turns into almost like a theory video going back and forth. Locke asks Desmond, how often did you listen to those records over there? And, Locke or Desmond basically says, oh, pretty much every day I listen to those records. And Locke says, maybe it could have been the music. Maybe Dharma basically Dharma could have manipulated the music somehow to convince the members down here that it was real, and maybe that was part of the experiment. So that was one of the theories that they basically talked to amongst themselves. But again, remember how the episode starts with Juliet kind of giving that look at the beginning after she starts playing downtown. So they're implying here that Dharma used music as a way to manipulate people, and maybe they had mastered a way of doing that, and maybe that was part of the experiment as well. Okay, so in episode 2, we have the Glass Ballerina, which is a Sun and Jin episode. And in this episode, we're going to start off with Saeed, Jin, Bernard, and Steve returning to the beach. And Steve and Tricia are basically going to get their one and only lines of the show, because Steve and Tricia embrace, and Nikki and Claire are wondering, where's Paulo? Where's Charlie? And Steve's the one that lets them know that Paulo, Jason, and the Marshal all died in the battle, and that Charlie, Kate, and Jack and Sawyer were captured. So they're obviously upset, and that only gets worse when Hurley, Locke, and Desmond show back up, and they reveal to the group that Mr. Echo died. And so lots of death going on, and everyone's pretty upset about it. So Saeed wants to go rescue Jack and the others, and he asks Desmond if they can borrow the sailboat. But just like in the episode, or in the finale actually, Desmond says no. He didn't sign up for their war, and he has no desire to go up against the hostiles, and that's the first time hostiles is used. Saeed tries to explain to Desmond that it's a rescue mission, so Sun wonders who they're trying to rescue, and Saeed explains that they're going to go rescue Jack and everybody else, and he could do it by going to the others' camp and approaching by boat. And Jin comes along because, like, Sun's basically saying, yeah, I'm going, so, you have to come too. So they go. So it's a little different than how the actual show is, because at this point, Jin is a little, he's been through a lot. Like, Michael's betrayed them all, so, like, his motivation to help Michael's kind of gone. But, he still wants to, Jack, Sawyer, he still wants to help Charlie, I don't think he's ever said 2 words to Kate, but you know what I mean. The episode's pretty much exactly the same for Saeed, Jin, and Sun up until where they find the others' camp. So I should reiterate, these are all the scenes from the season 2 finale moved here. So the forked-toed statues moved here, and then going up to the fake others' camp is here. So all that stuff is exactly the same, but it's moved to here. So because of that changes the rest of the episode. Remember, Jack is captured, so they're not trying to light a fire to find Jack. They're lighting a fire to lure the others, and that's what causes the conflict in this episode, because Jin is like, no, like, I don't want to be here to fight the others. We're here to rescue Jack. Now we're fighting them again. We already lost. Like, people died. Like, let's get out of here. But because Jin has a temper tantrum, like he always seems to do, Sun takes Saeed's side, and they stick around, just like they do in the episode. And then the rest of the episode pretty much goes exactly like it does, except they're not at the Pala Ferry. They're at the others' fake camp, and they light that giant fire to get the others' attention. And they already knew that they were there because they saw the boat and everything like that. Now, the other huge difference I'm going to have, though, with the series is that Kate and Sawyer are not building the runway. They're not doing that. There's going to be no runway scenes. So Pickett still needs to get his nose broken. So how are we going to do that? So essentially what's going to happen in this episode is when they bring them lunch, that's when Sawyer attacks, and that leads, and he steals a gun and is trying to make a break for it, but then Juliet threatens Kate, so he puts the gun down, and basically the same scene that happens at the runway happens in the cages. Episode 3 is a completely new episode, but with the same title. Episode 3 is Flashes Before Your Eyes, which is a Charlie episode. So here we go. This is where we're going to answer the question of what if Charlie got the flashes and not Desmond? How would this season go? Okay. So this episode marks the first Charlie scene. We haven't actually seen Charlie yet in episode 1 or episode 2. So he's being held in the same building where room 23 is. And what happens is he's taken out of room 23 and put onto a boat and is taken into the middle of the ocean. And then there he is sent on a small boat away from the others. And when this happens, he gets a vision of lightning hitting Claire's tent. So he gets a flash of seeing that, and then he's suddenly back on the boat. But then right after that, he gets another flash where he's back on the beach by himself. It's just him on the beach, nobody else there. And he remembers what he just saw with the lightning. So he grabs a golf club and sets it up, hoping that the lightning would hit it. But before he can do anything, like to really set it up, he's back on the boat again in the water. Meanwhile, back on the beach, Saeed, Jin, and Sun have returned to the beach off screen. So they're already back, basically. Locke and Desmond take Saeed down to the hatch and show him how the hatch just throws things around the room now with system failure and then goes back to 108. So now Saeed knows that the button was fake, and he has the visual evidence to see it. So Saeed points out the obvious, that the hatch is not safe anymore because of all the flying objects every 2 hours. Someone's going to get hurt down there if they try to actually live there. So that's why in a few episodes from now, the ping pong table will be moved to the beach, and it won't be used in the hatch. So essentially, the hatch is not safe, because less than every 2 hours, all the stuff in there flies around. Like, someone's going to get hurt if they're down there during the system failure reset. So essentially, that's what's happening. It doesn't just happen that one time, and then it doesn't happen again. Because remember, the computer's broken. So afterwards, that's when they have this. They have a very similar conversation to what happens at the beach, where Desmond tells Saeed that he believes that the computers communicate with each other. And then Locke says that he can use that to communicate with the others to find Jack, Charlie, Kate, and Sawyer. But, Saeed points out the obvious, that the computer is broken, but Locke says they need to go to another hatch. So like in the episode, Locke makes a pit stop at the beach and invites anyone who wants to come, and Nikki decides that she wants to go to the Pearl as well. Bernard and Rose get a talking scene where Bernard also shows interest in going, but Rose basically says no because he just got back from the army, and Rose basically tells Bernard that he is on leave. So we're seeing that initial stage of where Rose and Bernard kind of want to stay out of everything. Initially, but not too much yet. So Locke, Desmond, Saeed, and Nikki go to the Pearl Station. Okay, so meanwhile back at Hydra Island, Charlie gets experimented on again, out in the boat in the water, and this time in the flat. The experiment is him being pushed out into the sea to see what happens, and he gets a flash, and in this flash he sees Claire drowning, and even though he doesn't think he knows how to swim, he jumps in and learns he can swim. So he actually saves Claire, puts her on the beach, but before he can do anything else, he flashes and he's back in the boat again. But this time, because he's like, wait a minute, I can swim, he jumps out of the boat and tries to swim away from the others this time. And he swims away from the island, and when he does that, he gets another flash where he's back in the water, but near the beach, and he sees a bird stuck in the ground. And then he gets another flash, and he passes out, and the next thing he remembers, he's back in the room that they're keeping him in again. So, and again, this will go back and forth between... So essentially, this is the first episode without flashbacks. These flashes to the beach are basically kind of count as the flashback, if you will. And as the episode ends, we're back in the place where Charlie's being kept, and he has one more flash at this point. This is the first flash he has out of the water, so he's not in the water anymore. He gets another flash, and then he's back at the beach. But this time he sees Jack. And Jack goes up to him and asks if he's okay. And Charlie is basically like, yeah, why wouldn't I be? And Jack says to him, you look chipper for someone who was about to die. And then we see the lost local. So that is episode 3. So episode 4 is Every Man for Himself, which is a Sawyer episode. There's not too many differences in this episode. This is almost exactly the same. One difference is that Desmond does say something to Claire about the roof, but he does not set up the golf club. So when the lightning strikes, the club is already set up. But this does prompt him to ask Claire again, look, if it wasn't for that golf club over there, you may have been electrocuted. I really should take a look at that roof. So she agrees to let him take a look at the roof. So there was a deleted scene where Nikki talks to Claire. It was originally removed from further instructions, but I'm adding it to this episode, and it's going to talk a little bit. It's basically going to be Nikki and Claire talking about Charlie and Paulo, because remember, Paulo is dead, and Charlie's missing. So. And it's going to be kind of an awkward conversation that they have, where Claire's just like, okay, great, I don't really want to talk to you, that type of thing. And if you remember how awkward it was in the deleted scene, you know where I'm going with this. So just before we move on, further instructions was basically deleted completely, and we removed all the echo scenes from episode 5, but we are moving some of the stuff around from that episode. So episode 5, though, for my version is I Do, which is the Kate episode, and not too many differences here. In the flashback, the plane tickets are to Australia, so we're going to explain in this episode how Kate gets to Australia. She gets the plane tickets to go to Australia for her honeymoon, and she uses them before she's found out. So that's essentially how she gets to Australia. Now, there are scenes of Jack, Juliet, and Ben at the funeral scene where Juliet shows Jack the video where they try to do the coup on Ben during the surgery, and those scenes are all moved to this episode from the one that we deleted. So that's here. So that's all in this episode. And then again, everything else is exactly the same except for one random thing. Hurley goes back to the hatch and he finds a dartboard and some really sharp darts, and he brings them to the beach so they have a dartboard to play with. And on the way, he kind of trips and drops some of the darts on the way back to the beach. Alright, then we have episode 6, which is Not in Portland, which is a Juliet episode. And there's only 2 major differences here. Everything else is exactly the same. The first difference is that when Kate and Sawyer rescue Carl, they also rescue Charlie from the building where room 23 was. So Charlie is rescued at this point. And so far he's only been in episode 3, but you got to remember that he was pretty much 4/5 of that episode Charlie was in. So he's had a lot of screen time. And Not in Portland. So Not in Portland, we're going to get a reveal that answers one of the questions that I introduced in season 2. So remember in season 2 at the end of the finale, there were 3 men in the shadows, and one of them says that they needed to calculate a new bearing. Well, in this episode, we reveal who one of those 3 shadows was. It's going to turn out that Richard was the one of the 3 shadows saying that the bearing needed to be recalculated. So it is official that Richard is one of the 3 shadows. And we're going to have to keep watching probably till season 6 to figure out who the other 2 shadows were. Okay, so episode 7 is called The Ring, and it is a Desmond episode. So now remember, Charlie is the one getting the flashes. Desmond is not. So this episode is going to be a flashback episode with the scenes that we got from Flashes Before Your Eyes in the Desmond episode on the actual show, except anything having to do with time travel is completely removed. Completely. So it's just a flashback about Penny moving into his flat and him applying for the job at Whitmore Industries and going out to get a ring. So that's essentially what we're dealing with. So the episode's going to begin with, but it's going to start off a little bit different. So here we go. This episode begins with Locke, Saeed, Hurley, Desmond, and Nikki discussing if they should try to go rescue Jack or not. Remember, most of them had been to the Pearl. They saw Mikhail on the screen, and they're like, ooh, okay, like now what do we do? And Locke says he knows how to find the others, but Saeed is like, no, we need something more than just some man on a TV screen. And Locke says he does have more, but when Saeed tries to figure out what that is, which it's going to be the stick, they hear screaming from the water. So when they see that Sun has the baby, they figure that it's Claire in the water, and Desmond dives in to go save her. But then the camera stays on him. He dives, he looks around, but in my version, he can't find her. So he believes that she's drowned in the water and that he completely failed. So when he returns to the shore, he is surprised to see that Claire is all right. Saeed had already performed CPR on her, and everyone's happy that Claire's fine, except Desmond. Desmond's frustrated by this, and he physically shows his frustration with it, and it confuses everybody. So Hurley, knowing that Desmond likes the booze, and remember, Hurley's still kind of upset about Libby being gone. He goes to Sawyer's tent and finds the McCutcheon whiskey, and Hurley and Desmond get drunk together, just because they're both in misery, and Hurley's just trying to figure out what the heck was that all about, and I'm miserable myself. So there's no that guy sees the future, anything. Remember, Charlie's not even there, so none of that's going on. This is just what's wrong with you, man? Maybe getting him drunk will figure it out. So when he asks Desmond why he looked upset when Saeed saved Claire, because again, that's kind of suspicious too. Desmond says he's trying to deal with the fact that he can't save people, even when he tries to. Like the hatch key didn't save anybody. Claire almost drowns, but she apparently saves herself, and basically Desmond just can't deal with being normal, just like when he tried to do the race around the world. He believes he needs to do something big and important. And it's kind of similar to how Jin was before he met Sun, if you recall the And Found episode. So again, like I mentioned before, the flashbacks are the same, except it's flashback, not time travel. There's no reference to time travel. Now he is going to see Charlie in the street, but he's not going to recognize him. So you know how like they bump, like Boone and Sawyer bump into each other at the police station, that type of thing. Like it would be revealed that Charlie and Desmond like saw each other at one point. And hey, it gives Charlie something to do in this episode. How about that? So then what happens after like he applies for the job, he doesn't get it. He does go to buy a ring from Miss Hawking. Now, unlike what the episode where she reveals his entire future to him, that does not happen here. When he says he's about to take the ring, she criticizes him. She's like, "Oh, you're not going to be able to afford this," and it kind of starts an argument with him, with the two of them, because she's basically being like really rude about everything. So she's like, "I'll tell you what, I will let you take the ring for free, because I am that convinced she will say no." So he takes the ring and is prepared to ask Penny to marry him, and they take the picture with the background and everything like that, the famous picture that they have. And then right after they take the picture, and by the way, they get multiple copies, not just one. Like right then and there, the guy gives them like 5 copies, so that explains why there's so many of this picture. So after they take the picture, Penny and Desmond do not break up right then and there, but Desmond does not ask her to marry him either, because what happens is right after they take the picture, suddenly the police go up to Desmond and ask if he can be searched, if he'd volunteer to be searched. And at first he refuses, but then guess who the police are with? They are with Miss Hawking, who points at Desmond and says, "There's the man who stole the ring from my store." So essentially what Miss Hawking did was she said, "Oh yeah, you can take the ring to ask," but what she was really doing was trying to set Desmond up as a thief. Like she was trying to get the police to arrest him. So, and why? Who knows? We'll have to wait till season 5. So what happens is Desmond refuses to get searched and he runs because he has the ring. So like he doesn't even want to try to argue that like she gave it away for free, because realistically that does seem kind of ridiculous. That anybody would do that, any jeweler would just do that. So the police chase him down. He throws the ring into the water just like in the show. Penny does not see this happen, but he eventually chases. The police eventually chase down Desmond, and he's arrested. So again, it's a regular arrest, no army arrest, and that's why Desmond is in jail. But again, Penny and Desmond do not break up. So at the end of the episode, Desmond's like, "Well, that's all the horrible stuff that happened to me," and Hurley tells him all the things that happened to him on and off the island. So Hurley kind of goes into his story too, and he tells Desmond that like everybody there has a story, and that we all have stuff, man, and you kind of need to just get over it, dude. And Hurley walks away, and Desmond kind of reflects on that, and that's how the episode ends. So episode 8 is Stranger in a Strange Land, which is a Jack-centric episode. Charlie being with Kate and Sawyer is basically the primary difference. That like Charlie's gonna kind of be a third wheel, not say too much as they come back. Like he might be like, "Good morning, I got papayas," kind of like he did with Alicia and Saeed. Carl is also going to reveal that his grandmother crashed on the island just like they crashed on the island, and that's how his entire family got there and became part of the others. And in the flashback with Jack, and this one I really want to emphasize, Atra is shown beating Jack in poker and taking his money and teaching him how to play poker. Okay? So Atra is not just going to show him how to fly a kite. It's also going to be revealed that she's the one who teaches Jack how to play poker. Because they specifically say in Season 2 that he learned how to play poker in Phuket. So there you go. Okay. Now we're also going to humanize the scene with Cindy a little bit more. We're not going to make it nearly as suspicious as the show had it, where like Cindy's just like, we're here to watch, Jack, and you should know what that means. Now we're going to be a little bit more clear about everything. When Cindy sees Jack, she tells him that at first, yes, she didn't like that she was taken by the others, but then nothing bad happened to her, and once she saw that other people from the tail section had willingly joined the others, she decided to join them as well. She says that what the others are doing is really important, and it's not her place to tell Jack what it is. So there is a little bit of that suspicious stuff going on as well. Okay, so episode 9 is Tricia Tanaka is Dead, which is a Hurley episode. So we're going to see Claire, Sawyer, and Charlie get back to the beach, and then Charlie and Claire are going to have a big reunited scene. They're going to have a big kiss, like a really good reunited scene between those two characters. But Charlie is still bumming because of the Jack's death prediction that he had in the Flash. And what's also going to freak him out is that Claire is going to tell Charlie that she almost drowned recently. And remember, Charlie had a flash where he saves Claire from drowning. So now he's really starting to believe that if Claire just almost drowned and I had a flash that I saved her, that maybe I really am going to die, you know. So now he's really starting to freak out about it a little bit. And he wants to tell Claire that he had a vision of Jack saying he would die, but Sawyer asks everyone what happened to his stuff, and Desmond admitted he drank it. But he didn't go through the rest of the stuff, and then Sawyer asked who did. So that's why Sawyer goes out and finds Hurley at the Dharma van, and that part plays out exactly like it does on the show. Remember, it's just Hurley, Jin, and Sawyer out there for a while. Charlie does not go initially. So Charlie's back at camp, and he wants to, and he goes to tell Claire what's going on. But again, after she tells him that she almost drowned, he just says that he doesn't have the strength to tell her, and it's not her, but he just needs space. He was just captured by the others and got experimented on, and so like Claire agrees and then lets him be. So again, he tries to tell her, but then he just really, really does not want to because of the whole like drowning thing, and just dealing with the reality that he's gonna die is just stressing him out. So obviously, after there's no fix to the Dharma van, Hurley comes back and reunites with Charlie. Remember, this is the first time they see each other all season, so they're very happy to see each other. But then they kind of go into what each other is dealing with. The conversation kind of changes and gets a little, you know, basically what happens in the show where Hurley like gets Charlie up and it's like, okay, listen, I have something that might actually kill you. And you know, it's very similar to how the show handles it. It's just, again, it's the only difference is that same scene is also going to be a scene where like they unite. So but again, like Hurley already knows Charlie's back, so he's probably not going to have as big of a reaction he did with Sawyer. And then just to remember, Apollo's dead, so I know that he's in this episode, but not in my version because he's dead. So just a reminder there. Okay, so episode 10 is Pair Avion, which is a Claire episode. And what we're going to do here is we're combining the Enter 7-7 episode with the Pair Avion episode. It's all going to take place in one day. And Saeed's flashback is completely eliminated. And we're making a few changes to what happens. So the best way to go through this is to just go in chronological order in the episode. And remember, throughout the episode, that's when we're going to have the Claire flashback. And that's exactly the same, except for one additional scene in the Claire flashback, which I will get to. So Perry Von opens with the picnic with Claire and Charlie, and then it goes all the way up to the scene where Claire gets mad at Charlie and like kicks him out of the tent. And all that stuff, just to reiterate what happens in the episode, they go for the picnic. Desmond wants to go boar hunting, but in this case, he legitimately does. He doesn't know about the flashes yet. The other scene in Père Yvonne that is going to be deleted is the scene where Sawyer is forced to say Claire's first name. At the beginning will be removed because that doesn't happen until later in the episode. So that's that. We will remove that from the morning part. And then later on, when they're trying to capture the bird and, Desmond shoots at the boar, that actually is a true accident. Like it's Desmond's not trying to scare off the birds or anything like that. Like, that was just a coincidence. So Claire really does overreact, thinking something's going on. But Charlie does act like, what's the point or whatever. He came back from the thing with a car and he was suddenly happy again, But then, once the bird thing was brought up, he remembered his flash about the bird, and then that kind of freaks him out again. So in the afternoon, that's when we have the events of the ping pong match and enter 7-7. So when the flame station blows up, it's going to blow up in the daytime. So again, everything takes place in one day. And again, there's no Saeed flashbacks. So now, as you've probably gathered, all these episodes, there's no 42-minute time limit on them. These could go longer. There could be fewer commercial breaks in one episode, longer commercial breaks in another. Just think of it like that. There's no rule, or you can think of it like streaming. Even again, I'm not marrying this to ABC broadcast rules. So don't worry about the timing too much. The extras seen during the ping pong game include Beth, Orlando, Marcia, Becky, Ava, Jesse, Natalie, Chloe, Brian, and Kiana. They're the ones that are there watching. And then you have the rest of the cast who's basically there. Nikki's there as well. And then, what I mean by rest of the cast is the cast that you could see during the actual episode. And then after that, we get the second half of Père Yvonne, which is... So what's going to happen, and we're going to not see this in real time, but Desmond's going to explain it. We're going to see the scene where we see Charlie and Desmond arguing, and, Claire follows Desmond to see what's going on. And Desmond's the one who grabs the bird. But then Desmond explains to Claire what's going on. Desmond explains that Charlie thinks he's going to die because he saw a flash that had this bird. He saw a flash where you drown. And he's kind of freaked out by this. So he told me about it. And I went to go get the bird. And now, Desmond doesn't explain why he goes to get the bird, but we already know. Desmond's trying to be important. Desmond's trying to do something big. So when Charlie confides in Desmond about what's going on, because remember, he got kicked out of the tent, basically. So after the ping pong game, he just kind of tells Desmond what's going on. We're never really privy to what prompted the conversation or anything like that, but we learned that Desmond ends up being the second person that Charlie decides to tell about this. And if you think about it, yeah, that's really the first time those two actually talk. There's not really too much interaction between those two, so it's just kind of they're both down on their luck for other reasons, and that's what kind of brings those two characters together. And then the rest of it plays off exactly the same, except let's now talk about the additional scene added to the flashback. Christian's money paying for Carol, which is of course Claire's mother's medical treatment, has run out, so they can't afford it anymore. So Lindsay brings Carol to Isaac, the faith healer, to see if Isaac could possibly heal Carol. And that is how the episode ends. Well, the actual episode ending will be the same as the episode where they see Jack at the other's camp. Which leads into episode 11, The Man from Tallahassee, which is a Locke-centric episode. And there are no differences in this episode. It is exactly the same. So episode 12 is Left Behind, which is a Kate-centric episode. And it's going to combine a little bit from expose and add a little bit of scene. It's going to add a scene, but then after that, it's pretty much exactly the same. The episode begins with Hurley and Sawyer playing ping pong, and then Nikki comes out of the jungle and faints. But it's nothing life-threatening. She's just dehydrated. But when she's resting in her tent, Sawyer goes through Paulo's bag and finds the nicotine gun. Because remember, like, his stash was taken, so Sawyer's trying to get his stash back. But Nikki wakes up and accuses Sawyer of stealing. Sun's there, and she witnesses the argument between Nikki and Sawyer, and she kind of comes in to defend her, like, why you? Because this is a little different. Like, he's actually in her tent, like, or in, I don't know if it's her tent, but whatever tent she was put into to rest, like he's in there with her, and that's what makes this a little bit more like awkward than his normal stealing, if you will. And but Nikki's kind of had enough. She's like, you know what, like I tried to hang out with you people, and now you're stealing from me. Like, I'm going back to my side of the beach, because they do say in the actual show that they're from the other side of the beach. So that's to keep that part consistent as to why we haven't seen Nikki up until this point, really. So that is the reason why Sun is sour on Sawyer most of the episode. So the other difference in Left Behind is that Locke never tells Kate that he made a case for her, and now he knows what she did, because Locke already knows that Kate was wanted for murder because Mars already told the group. Now, you could argue maybe the others told Locke like what she really did, but I mean, murder is murder. I mean, I guess they could mention the whole father murder thing, and then that would be kind of ironic, because then they ask Locke to do the same thing. But like, it kind of seems silly that he's gonna get mad about it in one episode and then he has to do it later. Like, that's kind of something on the actual show that's a little inconsistent. Maybe it's supposed to be ironic, but I find it a little inconsistent. So needless, and at this point, like, Locke's already knows his father's there, so it just I don't know, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So that's like the one thing we're gonna change for the dialogue in that scene, and then everything else is exactly the same in that episode. All right, we go down to episode 13, which is One of Us, which is a Juliet episode, and there's no differences in this episode. It is exactly the same as it is on the show. All right, so episode 14 is Catch-22, which is a Desmond episode. And in this episode, it starts off with Charlie seeing 4 things in his flashes. He sees the wire on the beach, the helicopter, a pile of fish, and a lady in a parachute. Now, he doesn't see a picture book of Desmond or anything like that. But Charlie does, remember, he's talked to 3 people about this. He's talked to Hurley, Claire, and Desmond. And the first person he sees is Desmond. So Charlie goes to Desmond because he confided in him about the flashes. And Desmond is motivated not because of Penny, but because he believes this could be the way off the island. So kind of like in the actual show, Desmond, because of the bird evidence, basically Desmond does believe that Charlie can see the future. So Charlie also remembers that Hurley was the one holding the wire in the Numbers episode, so they go to see him to see if he remembers where it was on the beach. And then through that, the episode's very similar to how they get the first aid kit from Jack. They ask Jin if he wants to go camping because they see the fish. So therefore, that's why they need Jin to go, because they're like, Charlie saw fish, and like the only person who can catch that much fish is Jin. So, because again, they're trying to make this happen because they think that this is their way off the island. And one of the theories is that like maybe these flashes will lead to them getting off the island. Like, you know how in the actual show, it's like it's all about Charlie dying. Well, in this case, they're thinking, well, maybe this is about yeah, like Charlie thinks he's gonna die because of that one flash he had, but maybe this is about them getting off the island. Like maybe if the bird doesn't work, maybe here's another way, that type of thing. And that's a conversation that's had between the characters. So when the helicopter shows up, Desmond reveals that he does think it's Penny at this point, and that and if he doesn't do what he needs to do, God's going to take her away from him, and something else will happen, and kind of like God testing Abraham. So that's how it relates back to the monk flashback that's happening in this episode. But he's basically overruled by Charlie. He's and everybody else. They're like, no, we're not going into the woods in the middle of the night. And you're going to have to do it without me. And Desmond waits because he does believe that he's going to need their help to get them down. So it's the middle of the night. They only have to wait a few hours. So, they wait. So then the next scene we're going to see is I don't know if this is the next scene, but we will see the Superman flashback convo. It happens in real time, and an arrow does come after Charlie, but a guitar gets in the way. It's not Desmond that saves him. It's just like a quick, whoa, shoot, that almost happened thing with the guitar. And there's no talk about Desmond shouldn't have saved him or anything, because remember, that's not what this episode's about in my case. They're just trying to get to Penny in real time, because Desmond is afraid that if he doesn't do what the Flashes are saying, if they don't get there and see her in the thing, it might not end up he might not be able to save Penny. So in the episode, they think Penny's dead, and then they remove the helmet of who they think is Penny, and it turns out that the woman who parachuted on the island is Ruth. Okay? So there's no Naomi here. The parachuter is Ruth. Now, just so you remember, Ruth is Desmond's ex-fiance who appeared in this episode in the flashback, the Catch-22 flashback. So, just to have some real talk here for a second, when I saw this episode, I expected the parachuter to be Ruth. Okay, I never expected it to be Penny. I did not expect it to be some person I've never heard of. I expected it to be Ruth, and I actually thought it was Ruth because the TV I was watching it on was very, very bad. I could barely see it. And it was very fuzzy. This is a long time ago, a 12-inch, very antenna TV. Okay, so long story short, I thought it was Ruth, and in my version, it is going to be Ruth. So episode 15 is D.O.C. It is a Sun episode. So again, like I just said, Ruth is the one who parachutes on the island, not Naomi. So clearly, the fact that not his girlfriend but his ex-fiance shows up on the island is going to generate some conversation between Charlie, Desmond, and Hurley and Jin, kind of. They discuss who Ruth is and how or why she is there with a photo of Penny. How does this all add up? Now, Ruth is unconscious most of the episode. She will wake up at the end and tell Hurley that they are all dead. So basically all of Naomi's lines are transferred to Ruth pretty much. And now here's what we are eliminating from the episode. This might be one of those episodes where there's longer commercials, and it might be a shorter runtime. There's no Mikhail in this episode. When Mikhail dies in Père Yvonne, at the Sonic fence, he stays dead. He does not come back in this episode. He does not come back in the finale. Now here's the kicker about this episode with Mikhail coming back and learning about the antenna. There's no need for it, because what happens in the finale, which I'm keeping in my version, is Bernard is the one that tells Ben everything about the radio tower, about the woman who parachutes on the island. Everything's revealed to the others in the finale. So there's no reason for them to find out about this from Mikhail, because Ben doesn't do anything about it in the actual show or in my version. So there you go. So all that's deleted of the puncture. Yeah, Ruth does not have a stick sticking out of her or anything like that. She's just dehydrated. She's just unconscious. She eventually wakes up. The island heals, so she wakes up. So there you go. So that's what happens there, and then everything else is exactly the same. The Sun and Juliet stuff stays the same. I will mention this is not my favorite flashback for Sun. The whole mom being a prostitute thing, I'm not a fan of this storyline. But I love seeing Mr. Kwan in this episode. And I like the idea that, like, Jin has to pay back the debt to his father-in-law. I like those two things. So I'm reluctantly keeping the flashback. So all the scenes with Charlie and Desmond and Hurley, they're taking Ruth back to the camp. That the whole time, like, they're carrying her back until she wakes up. So episode 16 is the Brig, which is a Locke episode. So in this episode we have again, Ruth is there, not Naomi. So Ruth tells Saeed that Penny hired her, and then they got to know each other because of Desmond disappearing, and that Ruth is an aviator, and that's why she was brought into the project, because she's a pilot. And the one other change I'm going to make to this is because we see Locke speaking to Cindy. So when Ben is in his spiel about John not being ready, Ben's going to tell Locke that him and Cindy and all the other Oceanic 815 survivors that were taken by the others were given a choice to join them, and they all did. Remember, like at the beginning of this episode, Ben is going to say to Locke, and this happens in the show and in my version, like, we're going, would you like to come with us? And Locke says yes. So he's given the choice. So Ben's claiming that Cindy and all the other people who were taken were given the choice to stay with the others or to go back with the survivors, and they all chose to stay. Now, is Ben telling the truth on this? Who knows? This could be still like the music brainwashing theory that the Locke and Desmond were discussing in the first episode, but it further explains, like, maybe there is a reason why Cindy and all the others stayed. Maybe it's the music, maybe it's the fact that there's food, and they're just kind of in survival mode and they're just dealing with everything just until it's safe. There's really no explanation really given there, but that's essentially what's happening with the Oceanic survivors that join the others. So just like Locke's trying to do. So it should all add up. And then the next episode is episode 17, which is the man behind the curtain, which is a Ben-centric episode. So a few things here. The eventual actor who will play Jacob will be the eyeball in this episode, so that's number one. And the scene where Locke beats up Mikhail is deleted because, again, there's no Mikhail, he's dead, so none of that happens. So what happens is Ben agrees to take Locke to see Jacob off screen. They have that little encounter in the tent, and the next thing we see is them getting water, and Alex gives Locke the gun, and then oh, hey, I heard you're going to see Jacob. So again, he agrees to take him off screen, which kind of happens in the actual episode too. He sees Mikhail get beaten up, but there's no scene where like Tom and Richard refuse to stop it or anything like that. So I realized that like the whole like maybe seeing him beat the crap out of Mikhail and like nobody stopping it might make Locke seem more important, but remember, like, Ben has already told Locke that like the reason that the others think he's important is because of his back healing, the fact that he was healed so quickly by the island. So it's really not that like, oh, so we don't really need to see a scene of him beating up somebody. But we're gonna go into why Locke is even more special in this episode, so just keep that in mind. Now, you might be thinking, well, wait a minute, how come Edward Mars wasn't considered special? And that's because he healed like the others have healed on the island. So, like his back wasn't broken or anything like that. So there's a scene where young Ben sees his mom. So then he tries to go out and run away after that. And when that happens, Ben's a smart kid. He doesn't run into the fence. His mom just appears on the other side and turns and goes back into the jungle. So he never makes that approach towards the fence. So therefore, she never says, "It's not time yet, Benjamin." She never warns him not to run into the fence. Now that's extremely important. You got to remember this part, that she never actually says anything to Ben. Because later, when he sees Richard in the jungle, Richard asks Ben what his mother said, and Ben lies to him when he said that it's not time yet. So he makes all that up. And then Richard thinks that Ben is more special than he actually is, because he's lying. Which just makes more sense for this entire series. They've been sick of Ben since episode 1 when he had to get surgery, because they're like, oh, if he's getting surgery, maybe he's not as special as we thought. And then, but at the very beginning of his experience with the others, he's already lying to him, saying that he heard things he never heard. So keep that in mind as we continue here. So that's pretty much, everything else is pretty much exactly the same. But now what this does is it adds more credence to the hearing versus the seeing. So we see Ben see his mom, like that happens. But we also see that Locke is able to hear Jacob say, "Help me." Or I should say, who we think is Jacob, and we'll leave it at that for now. And then Ben shoots Locke, just like he does in the actual episode, and asks, like he tells Locke that he shot him because Locke was able to hear Jacob. So in other words, Ben can see, but he can't hear, and Locke can hear, but we don't know if he can see yet. That's not revealed either way. I mean, I think it can be kind of assumed that he can't because he didn't see anything, but we don't know really what happened there. We don't know if anybody was there or not, but we did hear something, so I think we kind of know something was there. Okay, and then episode 18 is Greatest Hits, which is a Charlie episode. It starts off with the flashback of Jack and Juliet from the Lost Missing Pieces short episode, which is Operation Sleeper, where Juliet tells Jack what Ben's making her do. So it's explained to us what happens in the previous episodes, but in this one you actually see it happen, so it's a really quick flashback. Then we're going to see Carl get the outrigger and start to sail back to where the survivors are. But before we go out to the field, like we do in the actual episode, we're going to see Charlie waking up sweating and terrified from what he thinks is a dream, and he's dreaming that he's drowning. And I'll get to what that actually is a little bit later. So the moment that Charlie wakes up, he sees that he's bleeding from his nose, so he's kind of freaking out. But then Desmond comes up to Charlie and says that Jack wants to show everybody something, so that's when we have the field scene where we see Danielle blow up the tree. So after that, even though they're all really, and remember, Jack's super obsessed with blowing up the others, but the plan is to mark 3 locations, because the others said they're going to send out 3 teams. That's actually in the actual episode. So what they decide to do is use their 3 locations: the caves, the hatch, and the beach. Because as far as the others know, they're still living in all those locations. So they could use the hatch, which has the system failure thing happen every 108 minutes, stuff flying around the room, to be a pretty good trap for the others at that location. And then they'll still have to have, like, basically blowing up all 3 teams at all 3 locations. And just like the episode, they want to do it with wire, but then they have to shoot dynamite at it, just like they do. So that, that's what Danielle's doing. She's getting dynamite all ready to go at all 3 locations. So while this is going on, Jack and Charlie go to the caves, and that's where he does a medical exam on him. That's all his medical stuff is actually still there. Some of his stuff is still there. Like, some of it was at the hatch, some of it was at the caves. So, but whatever he needs to look at Charlie is still at the caves. So when Jack basically gives Charlie an exam, he has some pretty bad news for Charlie, and that is that he has an internal brain bleed. And despite outward appearances, he does not have much time to live. So Jack's able to diagnose that Charlie is going to die. Like maybe not today, maybe not next week, but he will. Like, this is an uncurable condition, and nothing's gonna save him. Okay, so here's an important thing. There's no scene of Desmond telling Charlie that Claire will be rescued. And the reason that scene is removed is not only because Desmond's not having the flashes, and Charlie is, but Charlie's not going to see it either in a flash, okay? Because it never happens with Claire. So we're not going to see that happen, and we're not going to reference that in any way. That's completely removed. So what happens is that when Saeed, Juliet, and Jack are discussing how to turn off the jamming equipment, that's when, Saeed says he's going to do he's going to swim down and sacrifice himself. And that's when Charlie volunteers, because he already knows he's going to die. So he's like, I can do it. And I guess the difference is, like, Jack still says, Charlie, you really don't know what we're talking about. He'll still say that. But that's basically why Jack lets him do it, because he knows Charlie's doomed. So there's no reason to talk him out of it. It makes sense for Charlie to go down and not Saeed. But Jack's the only one that knows for the diagnosis. So Saeed tells Charlie how to turn off the jammer, which makes sense, because, of course, why would it be Desmond? Now, they still think that the station's flooded and everything, so, there's that. But, and just like in the actual episode, Desmond's going to volunteer to go with Charlie, but then that's going to cause an argument between Ruth and Desmond in my version. Because Ruth claims that she risked everything to save him, and she's mad at him because he's once again not going to stand by her. Now, I got to remember that they've been exes for a while, so maybe a little ridiculous. Desmond tries to explain that Charlie has to do something, and that there's something going on with him, and he needs his help, and she tells him that he's doing this because he's actually afraid of seeing Penny again. Like, she basically calls him a coward again. And just to reiterate, this happens on the show, but I just wanted to say it. On the show, Juliet confirms that Ben blocks all the signals except theirs. So, like, that is in the show. That, like, that technically Ben's secret room would still work, and possibly even the flame, if it was still around, would still work. So there's that. So what I'm trying to say is maybe if they took the phone towards Dharmaville, they could actually use it there and not have to even worry about going to the radio tower. But, whatever. Okay, so episodes 19 and 20 are Through the Looking Glass, which is a Jack-centric episode. So in this episode, we're going to see the triumphant return of Isabel. Remember, we had her in Stranger in a Strange Land. We're going to bring her back for this episode. So, remember, there's no Mikhail, so they still have to send somebody down to the Looking Glass. So it's going to be Isabel. So Ben sends Isabel to the Looking Glass station because she's the sheriff. It makes sense for her to go because, they need to investigate how Charlie's even down there. Like, he's already been beaten, he's not talking, it makes sense they're going to send their sheriff. Ben tells Isabel that Juliet was the only other one that knew about the jamming, and now the island could be threatened, so that knowledge needs to now stay with him, her, and Richard. Now, he says this to her like when he's walking around with just Alex through the walkie-talkie. Because Isabel does swim down, and she does all the stuff that Mikhail does. So he said if Juliet betrayed him, this knowledge could lead to other betrayals. So that's why Charlie, Bonnie, and Greta all need to die. So that's how Ben puts it to Isabel. So Isabel reminds Ben that he is asking her to break the rules, and there will be consequences for that. And Ben reminds her that the island is under attack by forces that they haven't seen in many years, and they need to protect the island. Isabel tells Ben she does not need to be reminded of her duties to the island. So, in the actual episode, Desmond's spare gun takes out Mikhail, but in this case, Desmond's spare gun will only disarm Isabel. She's not going to die and come back to life or anything like that. Her gun's just going to get knocked out, and then Desmond's going to grab the gun, They're going to get the combo from Bonnie because, Isabel did kill Greta and Bonnie. She eventually dies from the bullet wound. But Isabel is just going to be sitting in the chair that Charlie was sitting in and, under guard by Desmond. But when he gets the diving gear, she stealthily goes into the water, and then she does the grenade outside of the communication station to flood the station. After she learns from the others that the equipment will run forever if she floods it. So now here's the funny part of this episode. Mikhail just blows himself up for some reason, which makes no sense to me. I don't know if he expects to come back to life again. I have no idea. But in my version, Isabel does not intend to die here. She really doesn't. She lets the grenade go and starts to swim back up. But what happens is the grenade floats back up alongside her. So for the first time, we actually see this character have a look of surprise on her face, and the grenade explodes right in front of her. But it has just enough force to break the glass, so the room floods just like it did before. Charlie dies and shuts the door just like he did before to save Desmond, because he didn't have the stuff on yet. He was afraid Desmond couldn't get out in time. Now, even though Isabel got out in time, so I don't really know why he was that concerned about it, but either way, Charlie was gonna die, and he knew that he didn't want to chance Desmond not dying, because again, he was gonna get obsessed with seeing Penny on the monitor and everything. So meanwhile, back to the pit of bodies, we're gonna have Locke there, getting ready to commit suicide, but then he hears the whispers, and then he hears, remember, he has the power of hearing. He heard Jacob, or the person that may or may not be Jacob, and in this scene, he hears Walt. Now, in the actual version, we see taller ghost Walt, but in my version, we are not going to see Walt, but we will hear Walt, okay? So Walt says the same exact thing he says to Locke, but we don't see him. And this will eventually be explained in season 6. Just gotta sit tight for that one. And then finally, at the end of the episode, Locke kills Ruth with a knife, just like he does Naomi. And this is going to be a very interesting setup in season 4, because Locke has now killed Desmond's ex-fiancée. So we'll see how that all turns out in season 4. Alright guys, I know that was a long video, so thank you so much for watching this and the other 2 videos for this whole series. I know it's a lot of your time, and I really do appreciate you tuning in for these videos. Next month, we're going to be doing my version of Lost for season 4. And to give you a sneak preview, here's the main question we're going to be asking for that season. Ready? The question is, what if Jeremy Bentham was a real person? Yeah. What? Oh, yeah. Remember what happened with Jeremy Bentham in the actual show? Spoiler alert, ends up being Locke. Well, what if that's not the case? What if Jeremy Bentham was an actual person? Anyway, we will get to that when we get to season 4 and see how that all turns out. So thank you so much for watching this video again. And as always, take care. Hey guys, I have a really quick after credits thing. So I noticed, going back to the season 2 alternate version of Lost, I did specifically say that in season 3 I was going to explain why the plane crashed. So I didn't really make it super self-explanatory, so I want to explain it right now. So in the actual show, in season 2, when the system failure happens, when Desmond almost doesn't get to the button, that's when the plane crashes. But in my version, the button is fake. So how does the plane crash? Well, in season 3, we see Charlie being sent to the border of the island. and we're seeing him getting the flashes going a little bit forward in time. And that's essentially what's going on, is they're trying to figure out what the bearing is. So like they say they have to change the bearing after Michael and Walt leave the island. So when they have Charlie being pushed out into the water, they're basically trying to make sure that the bearing that they think they have works. And a couple times it doesn't, and then they're able to verify eventually that it does. So that's essentially what's happening. So, how did the plane crash? Well, when it hit the border of the island flying over, that's when the plane crashed. So, you might be thinking, like, oh, well, even if there's like a dome going around the island, does it really go up that high? Well, the answer in my case is yes. We're basically assuming that the dome of the island is not a perfect sphere. It's kind of like a oval sphere that goes up pretty high into the sky there. So if you're flying over it directly, chances are you're gonna crash on the island. And I mean, look, we've seen what happened with Danielle. We've seen the hot air balloon on the show. Like we've seen the Black Rock. Like things crash when they approach the island. The only time they don't crash, just like the helicopter crashes, the only time they don't crash is when they have the correct bearing to get into the island and out, which of course will be revealed in season 4. But at this point, it's an implication that, like, well, hey, if Charlie's having all this issues having happened to him when he's at the border, that's why the plane also crashed on the island. So that's the explanation for that. Thanks so much for tuning into these after credits, and take care.